If there is one image of Lord Krishna that we all hold in our minds, it is his smile. Throughout the bloodiest war in human history, through the betrayal, the slaughter, and the chaos of the Mahabharata, Krishna was the anchor. He was the calm in the center of the storm. When the terrifying Narayanastra was unleashed, threatening to wipe out the entire Pandava army, Krishna didn't blink. He just smiled and told his men to drop their weapons. When Bhishma was tearing through their ranks like a hurricane, Krishna calmly stepped off the chariot with a chariot wheel in his hand. Nothing scared him, nothing surprised him, because he was the author of the play. But there was one day, just one single moment on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, where the smile vanished from the face of God. There was one moment where Krishna didn't have a plan, where he didn't give a philosophical speech, he just panicked. And the reason he panicked wasn't because of a magical weapon. It wasn't because of a nuclear-level explosion. It was because the arrow flying toward Arjuna's throat was not made of wood and iron. It was breathing, it had eyes, and it had been waiting for years to eat Arjuna alive. To understand this terrifying moment, we have to rewind time. We have to go back to a terrible dark chapter in Arjuna's life, the burning of the Khandava forest. Years before the Kurukshetra war, Arjuna and Krishna had helped the fire god, Agni, consume an ancient massive forest. It was a brutal event. As the forest burned, millions of animals, spirits, and creatures were trapped inside the inferno. Among those creatures was a tribe of Nagas, ancient, powerful, mystical serpents. In the heart of that burning forest, a young Naga named Ashwasena watched in sheer horror as the flames consumed his home. He watched as his mother, desperately trying to protect him, was burned alive. Ashwasena barely escaped the fire, his scales scorched, his lungs filled with ash, but his heart filled with something much darker. Pure, unfiltered, absolute vengeance. He made a vow to the ashes of his mother. He would kill Arjuna. He would drink his blood. But there was a massive problem. How does a snake, even a magical one, kill the greatest archer in the world? Arjuna was protected by divine armor, celestial weapons, and most importantly, he was protected by the Supreme Lord himself. A direct attack would be suicide. Ashwasena was fueled by rage, but he was not stupid. He knew he couldn't fight Arjuna head-on. He needed a vessel. He needed an instrument. He needed someone who hated Arjuna just as much as he did. Someone who had the skill to bypass Arjuna's defenses. He found exactly what he was looking for in the king of Anga. He found Karna. For years, Ashwasena stalked Karna. He watched him practice. He watched his hatred for Arjuna grow. And when the great Kurukshetra war finally erupted, the serpent made his move. Through dark, ancient magic, Ashwasena shrank his massive, terrifying form down until he looked like a single, lethal arrow. In the dead of night, while the camp slept, he slithered into Karna's tent and slipped perfectly into Karna's quiver. He disguised himself as the Naga Astra, the snake weapon. Every day of the war, Karna would reach into his quiver, feeling the wooden shafts of his arrows, completely unaware that one of those arrows had a heartbeat. He didn't know he was carrying a living, breathing demon on his back. Ashwasena just waited in the dark, feeding off Karna's radiating hatred, waiting for the perfect moment. That moment arrived on the 17th day of the war. The earth was soaked in blood. The sky was dark with vultures. It was the ultimate showdown. The duel the universe had been waiting for, Karna versus Arjuna. The clash between them was like two suns colliding. Arrows met arrows, creating shockwaves that threw soldiers off their feet. But Karna was growing frustrated. Arjuna was simply too good, and Krishna's maneuvering of the chariot was flawless. Karna realized that ordinary weapons, even celestial ones, were not going to finish this. He needed the ultimate strike. He needed to cut the head off the snake. Karna closed his eyes. He reached his hand over his shoulder, deep into his quiver. His fingers brushed against something icy cold. It didn't feel like wood. It felt like absolute death. It was vibrating. Karna pulled it out. The air around him instantly dropped in temperature. He didn't know it, but he wasn't holding an arrow. He was holding Ashwasena. Karna aimed the weapon directly at Arjuna's neck. He pulled the bowstring back so far it touched his ear. He took a deep breath, channeled every ounce of his lifelong humiliation, his anger, and his desire for victory, and he released the string. The sound of the arrow leaving the bow was not a thwack. It was a deafening, terrifying hiss that echoed across the entire battlefield. The moment the weapon left the bow, the illusion shattered. Mid-air, the arrow began to transform. It grew. It expanded. The wooden shaft turned into shimmering, indestructible black scales. The iron tip split open to reveal massive, venomous fangs dripping with cosmic poison. It wasn't an arrow flying through the sky. It was a giant, flaming serpent, roaring with the fury of a burning forest, shooting straight for Arjuna's throat. Down on the chariot, Arjuna was completely caught off guard. He had never seen anything like this. He froze. But Krishna saw it. Krishna's divine eyes recognized the serpent instantly. He saw the Khandava forest. He saw the vengeance. He knew in a fraction of a second that no armor in the three worlds could stop those fangs. He knew Arjuna was about to die. There was no time to chant a mantra. There was no time to summon the Sudarshan chakra. There was no time to even shout a warning to Arjuna. For the first time in his mortal incarnation, Krishna panicked. He didn't use magic. He used brute, physical force. Krishna, the supreme creator who holds the weight of countless galaxies within his stomach, stood up on the chariot. He concentrated all of his infinite, unimaginable cosmic weight into his feet, and he violently stomped down onto the floor of the chariot. The impact was cataclysmic. The solid ground of Kurukshetra literally shattered underneath them. The sheer force drove the wheels of the chariot deep into the earth. The entire chariot, the mighty horses, and Arjuna himself violently dropped 5 inches straight down into the mud. A split second later, Ashwasena flew over them. Because the chariot had dropped, the snake missed Arjuna's bare neck by a millimeter. Instead, the venomous fangs slammed into Arjuna's celestial crown, the magnificent headpiece given to him by Indra, the king of the gods. The crown, which was virtually indestructible, was instantly pulverized into fine dust by the sheer force and venom of the serpent. Arjuna collapsed, trembling, realizing how close he had just come to having his head ripped off. But the nightmare wasn't over. Ashwasena hit the ground, furious. He had waited years for this moment, and Krishna had stolen his revenge with a simple stomp of his foot. The giant serpent turned around and slithered at lightning speed back across the battlefield, right up to Karna's chariot. Karna looked down in shock as the giant snake spoke to him. "You missed," Ashwasena hissed, his voice dripping with venom. "You didn't aim low enough. Krishna tricked you, but I am still here. Pick me up. Put me back in your bow. Shoot me just one more time. I swear to you on my life, I will not miss. I will tear Arjuna's throat out, and you will be the supreme victor of this war." This was it, the ultimate temptation. Karna was being offered a guaranteed victory. He was being offered the death of his greatest rival on a silver platter. All he had to do was fire the snake again. No one would even blame him. It's a war, after all. You do whatever it takes to win. But this is the moment that defines who Karna truly was. He didn't look at the snake with gratitude. He looked at it with absolute disgust. Karna stood tall on his chariot, the wind whipping his hair, his eyes burning with a pride that even God could not break. "Who are you to offer me victory?" Karna roared. "Do you think I, Karna, the king of Anga, need the help of a crawling beast to fight my battles? Do you think I need to borrow the vengeance of a snake to prove I am the greatest archer in the world?" The snake hissed. "You fool! You will die today if you do not use me!" "Then I will die," Karna shouted back. "But I will die as Karna. I will not taint my honor. I do not rely on deception, and I never ever shoot the same arrow twice." He rejected the living weapon. He rejected the cheat code. He rejected a guaranteed victory because his principles were heavier than his desire to live. Ashwasena, enraged by Karna's refusal, turned and charged at Arjuna himself, without a bow. But without the speed of Karna's shot, he was just a snake. Arjuna quickly recovered from his shock, drew 6 arrows, and cut the serpent into pieces before it could even reach the chariot. The threat was neutralized. Krishna let out a deep breath, and with a slight motion he lifted his divine weight, allowing the horses to pull the chariot back out of the mud. The battle resumed, and a few hours later, Karna would meet his tragic end. But that moment remains etched in history. It is a moment that forces us to ask a very difficult question. We celebrate Arjuna as the victor, but when the chips were down, Arjuna survived only because God literally bent the earth to save his life. Karna, on the other hand, was offered the world. He was offered the ultimate revenge. He had the weapon that made even Krishna panic right in the palm of his hand. And he threw it away, simply because it violated his personal code of honor. Was Karna an arrogant fool for not shooting the arrow twice? Or was he the ultimate Sigma warrior, a man whose mindset and self-respect were so unbreakable that he chose death over a dishonorable victory? Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you were in Karna's shoes, would you have fired that snake a second time? I read every single comment, and I want to hear your perspective on this. If this deep dive into the hidden, dark lore of the Mahabharata blew your mind, you need to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because next time, we are going to look at the 3 specific curses that actually killed Karna before Arjuna even fired his final shot. You don't want to miss it.